to ask me what is the two biggest geopolitical events that basically have been destabilizing the world since 2023, I would tell you it was the fact that Ukraine was trying to join the West, and Israel was trying to join the East. And Russia stopped the first, and Iran and Hamas tried to stop the second. That's actually what's been going on globally, I would argue, for the past 3 years. Now, basically what this struggle is a reflection of is a far wider struggle between two networks that have been contesting for the world since the end of the Cold War. One I call the resistance network. It's Iran, Russia, North Korea, some days China, some days not. And the inclusion network, the European Union, the United States, the Gulf states, our allies in Asia, from India to China to Korea. There's been a struggle, really, between these two networks, the resistance network and the inclusion network, for who will write the rules of the post-Cold War world. Now, the resistance network is led by leaders who basically have militarized their society, basically for the purpose of ensconcing themselves in power and making their society safe for their own stealing, their own kleptocracy, or their own theocracy, often by creating external enemies. And that certainly applies to Iran and to Russia. On the other side, you have the inclusion network. It's not all democracies. It's, I would call democracies plus decencies, states that actually practice decency. And I'd put a lot of the Gulf states into that bucket, who see their job, basically, the leadership's job, as creating the conditions for more and more of their people to realize their full potential. And it's the struggle between these two networks that has been playing out on the front pages. Because Putin understood if Ukraine were able to join the West, that is, become a member of the European Union, not likely NATO, but the European Union, if Ukraine could join the West, it would be the biggest expansion of a Europe whole and free since the fall of the Berlin Wall. In fact, we'd be about 95% of the Western Balkans to a Europe whole and free. And every day, and the reason he feared this, Russians would wake up and look across the border and see another Slavic country, Ukraine, thriving within the European Union. And that was a fundamental threat to him. And that, to me, was the biggest reason for his launching an attack to actually wipe out Ukraine. It had nothing to do, I believe, ultimately with NATO. What he really feared was not Ukraine in NATO, but Ukraine in the European Union, and creating a Slavic success story next to his thieving Slavic kleptocracy. In the case of Israel, and basically what was going on October 6th, the day before the war, is the Biden administration was working basically on a deal by which the United States would engage in a security treaty with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia would agree to normalize relations with Israel, and in return, Israel would agree to open negotiations on a two-state solution with the Palestinian Authority. That's what was going on October 6th. That was a fundamental threat to Iran and to Hamas, because they understood if Israel were able to normalize with Saudi Arabia on legitimate terms of also opening a dialogue with the Palestinian Authority, we'd have the biggest expansion of the inclusion network in the Middle East since Camp David. And it would have completely isolated Iran. So that's actually what was going on, in my opinion. Russia moved to stop the first, and Iran and Hamas moved to stop the second.